Residents live in Alaska within the Arctic Circle. Their daily activities include fishing, hunting, and raising children, enjoying a life of freedom. A hint of chill fills the air, a sign of the approaching winter. His name is Chip, who has spent 25 years here. This is his lifelong companion, Agnes. They are busy preparing food for the winter. Chip now heads to the lake essential for their survival. Late autumn offers the last chance to catch whitefish, but setting nets on thin ice is one of the year's most dangerous activities. Chip uses an iron rod to check the ice thickness. Ice thinner than 2.5 centimeters cannot support an adult's weight, so he must be extra careful. The ice under his feet is about 5 to 6 centimeters thick. Quite safe. Soon, his wife joins him to help. After testing, the ice ahead is only 2.5 centimeters thick, and they cannot proceed further. With his family arriving, Chip holds a meeting, explains the tactics, starts the chainsaw, and cuts several rectangular holes in the ice. He then takes out a long fishing net, ties a yellow rope to the front, and threads it through these holes, a process requiring precision with a hook and is quite challenging. After some effort, they complete the task. They wait a bit before pulling the net. As they pull, plump whitefish, now in spawning season and very fresh, emerge from the water. Chip's family uses a large mesh net that lets smaller fish escape, capturing only the larger ones, following sustainable principles. Pleased with today's bountiful catch, the family processes the fish directly on the ice. Although they have fished today, luck may not always favor them. One day, Chip will also die, but he is not afraid of death, only the pain before it. Though the sun sets, Chip's family continues fishing to store more food for a better winter. Suddenly, the net gets stuck, immovable despite their efforts. Chip investigates and finds a float stuck in an ice crack. He picks up an axe, breaks the ice for half an hour, creates a hole, and after some maneuvering, they free the float and continue pulling the net, bringing in many fish. The next day, Chip wishes to stock up on meat for winter, but needs to cross a river where the ice isn't fully formed. For safety, he cannot risk it. Each year at this time, they are confined to their home, waiting for winter, relying on stored venison. Though it smells a bit aged, the meat is still good. Chip and his son move the reindeer home. Men hunt while women cut. Agnes sharpens her knife, inherited from her mother and exceptionally sharp. She skillfully disassembles the reindeer, saving the best meat for dinner. In their area, trading reindeer meat is legal. Chip often trades some for ammunition, gasoline, or parts. Here, meat is a true currency. Agnes focuses on the deer hooves, planning to make boots since this part of the skin is the toughest. Keeping the fur on the hooves adds warmth. A pair of boots requires 6 deer hooves, with the front leg fur covering the upper part. Sewn together, these boots also help in setting traps. The residual scent misleading animals into thinking they are reindeer, serving as a decoy. The next morning, Chip wants to catch some foxes. Due to rising river levels in the summer and increased village garbage, fox populations have thrived. There was even a rabies outbreak, so the village chief offered a $40 reward per fox caught. This benefits everyone by providing bounty money and fox pelt sales. Recently, villager Rodney spotted many foxes. After gathering information from him, Chip sets traps using frozen fish as bait, knowing foxes are clever. He creates double-loop traps, placing a hidden trap next to another, hoping for good results. The next morning, Chip checks the traps, hoping to catch some foxes. Unfortunately, the first trap is empty, and subsequent ones are also untouched, even the bait. However, there are fox tracks nearby, indicating their cunning exceeds expectations. Instead of wasting more time, Chip decides to remove the traps. He plans to hunt reindeer across the river once it fully freezes. Meanwhile, Agnes plans to trade whitefish for necessities. Barter is common here. She visits a neighbor and trades fish for whale blubber. In the cold Arctic, consuming fat is essential to maintain body heat. Tonight's dinner includes cranberries, whale fat, eggs, fish heads, and vegetables, focusing on nutritional balance. The family happily enjoys this hearty meal. The Arctic Circle is one of the world's most desolate places, synonymous with savagery and bloodshed. Yet some residents, longing for freedom, choose to settle here. Eric, after high school, moved to the Brooks Range and has lived in Alaska for 10 years. A certified guide and equipment supplier, he never buys meat from stores, preferring to hunt himself. Following week-old wolf tracks in the snow, he finds bear tracks leading to prey. Soon, he spots a medium-sized herd of reindeer. Approaching slowly, he selects a doe without calves, as reindeer are prime meat during this season. Within shooting range, he aims his rifle. The herd remains unaware of the danger. As he prepares to shoot, the gun clicks. A dud. The cold weather has frozen the firing pin, and the startled reindeer quickly scatter. Firearms often malfunction here, and today's hunt ends in failure. However, Eric is undeterred by life in the wilderness, and after repairing his equipment, resumes hunting the next day. Morning temperatures are -4°C, dropping to -20 outside the forest. Eric hides his backpack and snowmobile by a tree and proceeds lightly. He tracks a lone reindeer in the thick snow. Excited, he approaches and kneels to aim. The atmosphere is tense. The gunshot echoes and the reindeer falls in the snow. Eric approaches with a sled, sees the reindeer is still alive, and swiftly ends its life with a knife. This reindeer will provide 3 weeks of food. To prevent spoilage due to high internal temperatures, he quickly removes the organs. After slicing open the stomach, he pulls out the guts, cuts the heart first, and warms his frozen hands with its hot blood. The heart is also a tasty treat. To prevent it from freezing, Eric stuffs the heart back in, then lifts the reindeer onto the snowmobile and heads home. By the time he returns, it's already dark. He sharpens his knife further, preparing to skin the deer. Like tearing off clothes, the skin peels away, revealing the reindeer's healthy, plump figure. He then begins to cut the meat. The tongue, one of the fattiest and his favorite parts, is carefully preserved. Another tender cut is ideal for roasting. After sorting the meat, he feels hungry and fries a delicious pot of deer heart with some side dishes, then sits down to enjoy the fruits of today's labor. The next day is sunny, and Eric goes hunting again, targeting grouse and foxes. He finds fox tracks leading to a willow grove, a rabbit hotspot. Armed with his shotgun, he enters the thicket. After some searching, he spots a running fox and kneels to shoot. His first shot misses, but he calmly aims and hits with his second shot, bringing the fox down. Delighted by the $40 value of each fox, he continues his journey and finds another fox lying on the ground. With a single shot, he easily bags it, netting 2 foxes and boosting his mood. He also notices grouse tracks in the snow, hoping to catch 1 or 2 for dinner. After some searching, he hears birdsong ahead and discovers 2 grouse in the bushes. After aiming, he fires twice and secures both birds, ensuring a delicious dinner. It's been a fruitful day, and he returns home to start cooking. He skillfully prepares the grouse, removing the organs and separating the meat, then fries some cherished onions, one of his favorite dishes. At 29, living alone, he leads a refined life with excellent culinary skills. As the aroma fills the kitchen, he savors his meal, marking a prosperous and joyful day. He loves the Brooks Range, which offers the life he desires. The Yukon River is a powerful river that freezes every November or December. Andy, who has lived here for 30 years with his wife Kate, resides 22 kilometers from town. Each winter, ice blocks their route to town, and they must create a path for snowmobiles. Kate often says the Yukon River will eventually take them away. They must prepare and not act hastily. They own 25 sled dogs, essential for such conditions. With his wife's worried look, Andy sets off on his snowmobile, the dogs charging powerfully, giving him the feeling of a conquering general, filled with a passion for conquest. Despite the risk of no return, such as falling into an ice hole and being swept away, this is his chosen life of freedom, always at a cost. The dogs run tirelessly, and the snowmobile speeds forward, the cold wind stinging Andy's cheeks. But he enjoys the freedom. The vast wilderness brings him unprecedented peace of mind. Suddenly, he stops the dogs. The ice ahead is dangerously thin with uneven blocks and visible flowing water underneath. Alone, Andy checks and finds the ice only 5 centimeters thick, unsafe for crossing. He radios his wife Kate to update her, then decides to return. The dogs speed up, and they safely reach home before dark. The sled dogs are crucial for transporting wood and water, and their food costs range from $4,000 to $6,000 annually. Due to a miscalculation after switching dog food brands, only half a barrel remains, and they are blocked from town replenishment. Andy contacts a merchant for an airdrop supply, costing extra money, causing Kate to frown. Amidst her complaints, Andy sets out for the lake's center, the only viable landing spot for the plane. This is also risky, as the reflective lake surface can misjudge a pilot's altitude, but the experienced pilots manage a safe landing, bringing 8 bags of dog food, enough for 3 weeks. The Andys live frugally, spending most on their dogs, but the dogs significantly help, establishing a symbiotic relationship. On his way home, Andy spots a beaver lodge and decides to set a trap. He starts his chainsaw and cuts a hole in the ice. Beavers, beloved yet unfortunate, provide meat for his dogs and valuable fur for sale. Measuring the water, he finds it about 50 to 60 centimeters deep, ideal for trapping. Since beavers love poplar, Andy uses it as bait. When beavers swim by, they get caught by a wire noose around their necks and suffocate. He places a cross at the ice hole and secures it with blocks of ice, then returns home by sled. The next day, Andy heads straight for the beaver lodge. Overnight, the hole has refrozen. It's pitch black inside and nothing is visible. He breaks the ice and removes it, then lifts out the cross. Bite marks and half-eaten bark on the poplar show. But unfortunately, no beaver is caught. He adjusts the trap and places it back in the hole, planning to check again tomorrow. Sue, staying in a motel, lived at the Kavik campsite in northern Alaska 3 months ago, the site's sole resident. While wiring her tent, she broke her leg and had to go to town for surgery. Now recovered, she's ready to return home, having heard of grizzly bears near her camp. So she's armed. She drives to the airport and boards the plane home. But shortly after takeoff, a foul smell indicates a mechanical issue, and she must wait. The next day, the plane is repaired and successfully takes off. Flying over the camp, Sue feels anxious about possible bears. Once off the plane, she prepares to confront any grizzly. As she progresses toward the camp, bear tracks in the snow become clearer. A bad sign. She loads her gun and turns on her headlamp, then decisively enters a dark room. No grizzly inside, but worse, there's been an intruder. After a thorough check, many items are disturbed. A bad feeling grows as she checks her fuel supply, critical for surviving the winter. The fuel, which took a year to save for, is down to 1,300 liters, only enough for 10 days. With no fuel in such harsh winter, survival is uncertain. She despises the thief, feeling utterly disregarded for her life. Anger fills her eyes. Sue calms herself. Knowing a blizzard is coming, she must buy enough fuel, although it will cost more. She calls Pilot Bob for an emergency fuel delivery. Soon the plane arrives, but strong winds make landing difficult. Bob circles twice in the sky before finding an opportunity to land successfully. He brings 2 barrels of fuel, but that's also only enough for 10 days. She needs to find another solution. As winter arrives, Chip's family finds their meat supply dwindling. It's time to get fresh meat, just as the reindeer migration brings them near the village. The river has fully frozen, allowing safe crossing. Chip's family divides tasks. The best hunter is his wife Agnes, an authentic Inuit who thoroughly enjoys hunting. This also serves as precious alone time for the couple. Soon the two reached their destination. To avoid scaring the reindeer with the noise of the snowmobile, they decided to proceed on foot. They positioned themselves downwind so the reindeer couldn't smell them. Ahead, a small group of reindeer was grazing on moss under the snow, unaware of the impending danger. Agnes crouched down to aim, confident in her shooting skills. However, a gunshot scared the reindeer, and they fled due to the bullet being deflected by the wind. The reindeer headed towards the mountains, and chasing a panicked herd would be foolish. The experienced couple decided to take a detour and set up an ambush ahead. Given their limited resources, a day spent hunting without success would be a failure they couldn't afford. When they reached the mountaintop, they saw the reindeer had calmed down. Agnes took aim once more. Despite pulling the trigger, the strong winds caused her to miss again. After multiple scares, they could not continue hunting and chose to return home. They checked the weather on the computer and found that Thursday would be clear. They planned to hunt by the lake at the foot of the mountain, home to about 1,000 reindeer. Chip learned his hunting skills from his father-in-law, and Agnes's family had been skilled hunters. They now applied these traditional skills and planned to pass them on to future generations. On Thursday, they set out again and found a migrating herd. Agnes quietly aimed, waiting for the right moment. Although the reindeer were moving, she took her shot. One reindeer stopped suddenly, clearly hit. It tried to keep up but gradually fell behind the herd. The couple approached calmly. It was Chip's turn to act. He held the reindeer's head and used a knife to end its suffering. While the act of killing was unpleasant, Chip's family needed to survive. They always respected their prey, thanked it for its sacrifice, and prayed before processing the animal on site. They quickly skinned the deer and removed the organs. In extreme cold, they ate the kidneys or liver to stay warm. This way of life, relying on nature's gifts, is how the Inuit have survived. Waking up to a morning coffee was refreshing for Eric, who loved this lifestyle. However, he had run out of drinking water. Living in the Arctic Circle, residents typically fetched water from the river, known for its pure spring water. At the river's edge, Eric found the situation dire. The shore was frozen, but the ice was too thin. Falling in could have severe consequences, so he returned home to wait for nightfall. Riding his snowmobile, he headed to another water collection point. Fetching water in winter was hazardous, and Eric had to be very cautious to avoid a dangerous plunge. Standing on a small shelf of ice, he could hear it creaking. Many might not understand his choices, but he cherished his freedom. Life is short, and enjoying the moment seemed right to him. By the time he finished, it was already 1:30 in the morning. On the third day, Eric had much to do. Due to the extreme cold in the Arctic Circle, he had to continually burn wood, causing some of the stovepipe to deteriorate. Now, he needed to replace it to avoid any sparks igniting the house. To install a switch on the new pipe, he used a handgun to make a hole. Back inside, he removed the old pipe and installed the new one, then relit the firewood. It seemed to work well, since he needed to burn 3 to 4 boxes of wood daily, and his supply was running low. He had to go out and gather more. There were 2 types of wood available, dead spruce and green birch. He went to a frozen creek, took out his chainsaw, and began cutting down trees. In moments, a tree fell, and he quickly trimmed the excess branches and tied the wood to the back of his snowmobile. The vehicle sped off, flinging snow and dragging the wood, but moving too quickly carried risks. The snowmobile crashed into a small tree, but fortunately, he was not injured and continued home. Under the night sky, he prepared to split wood, embodying the essence of toughness. He started the chainsaw, cut the logs into short pieces, placed them on a stand, and swung his axe, splitting the wood with each strike. After hours of hard work, he finished splitting all the wood. Exhausted yet invigorated, he felt fulfilled, as this was what real men were supposed to do. At dawn, Andy greeted his sled dogs while savoring his coffee. He had an important task today, clearing the path to the town of Igor. At his command, the sled dogs burst out energetically and the snowmobile team charged ahead. However, the thick snow soon made progress difficult, and they quickly ran out of road. Andy picked up a shovel and began to work, with the dogs waiting quietly by his side. After half a day's labor, he realized he was still at his doorstep, a tough start. Now that the road was clear, they could continue. The lead dog jumped around a bit before the team realized it was time to move. The path was challenging, a significant test for the sled dogs. Led by a sharp-eyed husky, the team was full of energy, leaping effortlessly through the snow, shaking Andy on the snowmobile. Eventually, they entered a road cleared by locals, where each resident was responsible for a section, connecting to form a complete pathway. The sled dogs picked up speed and soon arrived in the quiet, picturesque town of Igor by the mountains and water. Andy had a school bus garage here, storing supplies, including dog food. He transferred a bag of dog food to his snowmobile and set off again, first stopping at the local post office to pick up a box of beer he had ordered, then heading to the supermarket for some plastic sheets to make a new snowmobile. After completing his errands, Andy headed home, managing to get back before dark. His wife had been anxiously waiting at the door and sighed in relief to see him return safely. After a hard day's work, it was time to relax. Nothing could replace a cold beer. The couple enjoyed their simple yet enviable life, sipping beer. The sled dogs had worked hard, so Andy rewarded them with some dried fish to replenish their energy. Outside, the wind howled as if the gods were angry. The biting cold hit Sue's face, causing a burning pain. She clutched heavy items to prevent being blown away by the blizzard. Although her steps were unsteady, her resolve was stronger than ever because she was on a mission. This was the far north, a functioning outpost serving as a weather station, gas station, and search and rescue station. and Sue was its only staff member. She had to keep the station running, not just as her job but as her mission. She had long been indifferent to life or death. To facilitate movement, she had set up safety lines with sturdy ropes between buildings, using them to check on various locations. Back inside the house, Sue monitored the weather changes on her computer. The temperature outside had plummeted to -50 degrees, and the wind had intensified. Even with safety ropes installed, stepping outside was extremely dangerous. Sue felt helpless and decided to stay indoors, waiting for the weather to improve. Here, she not only had to adapt to the harsh weather, but also contend with wild animals like black bears. With the nearest hospital 800 kilometers away, any injury could be fatal. Therefore, she was equipped with various weapons to defend against these fierce animals. A few years ago, she experienced a terrifying incident when a grizzly bear entered her cabin and attacked her while she slept, dragging her naked body dozens of meters away. Fortunately, she managed to grab a gun and scare off the bear, narrowly escaping death. Since then, she never slept naked and always kept a gun by her bed. After a day's wait, the blizzard finally ceased, and the temperature rose to -30 degrees. Sue shoveled the snow and checked the condition of the camp. She collected some willow branches, which contained salicylic acid, to alleviate the pain in her ankles, a lingering effect of the bear attack. Sue was not afraid of dying. She had tried living in the city, but her free spirit couldn't accept a mundane life, so she chose to continue living this challenging lifestyle, even at the risk of her life. This area was home to purebred lynxes, whose pelts were extremely valuable. Eric planned to set some traps and try his luck. He headed to the mountains to find the ideal spot. The scarce winter sunlight often depressed many, but not him. His days were fulfilling. Soon after nightfall, he arrived at his destination. This tree was his preferred trapping site, where he had been successful in the past and had high hopes for this year. He tied a bird's wing to a string, letting it sway in the wind, an arrangement known as a tassel, irresistible to any cat. They would attempt to catch it with their paws repeatedly. Eric then used branches to build a fence, luring the lynx into the trap. After setting the trap and covering the chain with snow, he used an axe to shovel clean snow over it to make it look more natural. He placed a branch at the forefront. The lynx would jump at it and land right on the trap. Then he used a piece of deer bone as bait. The dual allure of sight and taste was hard for the lynx to resist. This was a perfect trap. He planned to set more traps in the days ahead. Days later, despite having a cold, Eric went out to check the traps. Under the beautiful nightlight, he reached the first trap, which had been triggered but no lynx was caught, leaving only footprints. After resetting it, he checked the second trap, which had also been triggered but only left a few hairs behind. It seemed the lynx was mocking him, making him cough in frustration. After making repairs, he continued on and discovered a surprise. A plump lynx caught by the tail, a real predator of the Arctic, cunning and fierce, capable of hunting reindeer. Eric pulled out his handgun and put it down with a single shot, securing the valuable pelt. It was worth the effort. Carrying the lynx, he began his journey home. Though exhausted, he couldn't rest yet. He hung the lynx on a rack, and while the body was still not frozen, he skinned it. Only after finishing could he go to sleep. In Alaska, bartering is the purest form of trading. Agnes's sister needed fish, and they needed seal oil, so the two prepared to trade. Her sister's village was 50 kilometers away, and reaching it could only be done by snowmobile. For 8 months of the year, they traveled by snowmobile, and breakdowns were common. Today, the snowmobile wouldn't start again. Chip lifted the hood and discovered the track was the issue. He attempted a repair, but failed. Frustrated, he kicked the front of the vehicle twice, startling the dogs. Although there was a store nearby, it barely had anything useful, and snowmobile parts were particularly scarce. So, he grabbed his high-frequency radio and asked his neighbors in the village if anyone had a better track. Soon, someone responded. They had a track and wanted to trade it for meat. Fortunately, Chip had hunted a reindeer a few days earlier. Before long, the person arrived with a brand new track, exactly what Chip needed. Chip exchanged some reindeer meat for it, then installed the new track on the snowmobile. This vehicle, which had been in use for 10 years, was a crucial helper in their lives. Chip often maintained it himself. Now with the issue resolved, they could continue on their journey. In the Arctic, seal oil is an essential resource. Because of the extreme cold, regular food doesn't provide enough calories. Only food coated with seal oil converts effectively into energy. Agnes took out some top-quality whitefish, which were exceptionally fatty and rich in roe, specially reserved for her sister. Her sister lived in the next village, where the fish yield had been low this year. With these supplies, the family set off in high spirits. They enjoyed visiting relatives and friends, using the frozen rivers as their highways. The snowmobile sped across the ice, throwing up clouds of snowflakes that chilled their faces, but also brought a sense of freedom. About 20 minutes later, they reached the neighboring village. Agnes's brother-in-law, Jack, warmly welcomed them. Agnes presented the whitefish, and in return, Jack gave them a bottle of seal oil. This barter system was how they supported each other, with all activities revolving around food. Food could be traded or given as gifts. Tonight, they would have dinner at Jack's house. The sister had prepared a feast, including seafood, whale blubber, seal meat, salty biscuits, fresh bread, and side dishes like apples, carrots, and celery, items usually only available in stores but often out of stock. The meal was lavish, with all food smeared in seal oil to generate sufficient heat for their bodies. This dietary strategy was how locals survived in the Arctic. On the Yukon River, Andy encountered a problem with the solar panel. He checked the controller, which displayed garbled codes. Restarting the device fixed the issue. Because wood consumption was high in winter, he decided to let the sled dogs rest for a day and set out on his snowmobile instead. The snowmobile was faster than a dog sled but broke down just over a kilometer away. Andy checked the engine and felt the problem was serious. The old machine often malfunctioned in winter. Frustrated, Andy vented his anger by hitting the machine. With no other option, he spent considerable effort loading the snowmobile onto the sled and then walked home. He selected 10 sled dogs, harnessed them, and set off. The dogs were excited and unaware of what awaited them. They sprinted to where the snowmobile was parked. Andy tied the rope to the snowmobile and, at his command, they set off again. Despite the extra hundreds of pounds, the sled dogs handled it easily and quickly made it home. Andy stored the snowmobile in the garage and set out again to continue his woodcutting plans. When he arrived at the forest, he started his chainsaw and began the demanding task. Chopping wood was a great way to relieve stress, and soon he had cut through several logs. He selected a large tree to end the day's work. Although the logs were heavy, the dogs worked together, relying on momentum to start their journey home.